part of the whether you're going for your private commercial instrument, okay, or any other rating, those are two topics that will be covered by the examiner, okay? The first topic is emergency procedures. And then the second topic is going to be, basically, we're going to go over the FAR's Part 91 and just go over each one. And if you have any questions, any details about the FAR that you should know about. I won't go that much into detail about it, but at least the gist of what the FAR is all about and basically what it means, okay? So let's talk about, does anybody have any questions or any subject they want me to cover as far as emergencies, or any questions before I start? All right, nothing. Okay, so let's talk about emergencies, okay? For whether you're private or commercial, is something, you know, I've been very lucky. I've been flying for a long time. I've only had one emergency in my entire life, okay? That was not self-induced. There are emergencies that we self-induce sometimes, but that's totally different. All right, so let's talk about emergencies, okay? The very first one, there's a variety of emergencies that can happen. Let's talk about the very first one. That's the most important one, is something that happens when you're in flight. And basically, it would be an engine failure, okay? The idea is you want to have a procedure in your mind. You want to have it memorized that you can do it without even thinking. Now, we're all taught, very first thing is checklist, okay? And as far as that's concerned, this particular emergency, the checklist is the last thing that you do. The checklist is only to make sure that you didn't forget anything. And basically, I'm going to give you a little bit of a way of doing it where you'll do everything by memory. And once you're done, really the checklist won't matter because you've basically memorized the checklist. So let's talk about what's important. Here you are, you're cruising point A to point B. You're at 5,000, you're 6,000 feet, makes no difference to your altitude, okay, AGL, all right? And something happens where the engine is starting to run rough, and it's let's say, losing power, okay? Obviously, very first thing, when that happens, obviously, your heart is gonna race a little bit, okay? But whether your heart is racing or not, the very first thing that you really want to do is find a place to land. And because the reason why I say that is that's the very first thing, because it may take some time to find it. It may take a little bit of planning to figure out where you're an airport, a road, a field. It may take a little bit of time to figure out where it is. So that's the very first thing you want to do. Find a place to land by looking in front of you, by looking to your left, by looking to your right. Sometimes by even knowing what's behind you as you're flying along, you know, from point A to point B, because you may have just passed an airport. Some people just we become focused on what's in front of us. We just passed an airport and it's right behind us. And therefore there's no sense going further forward if the airport with the big runway is right behind us. So basically know your surroundings, okay? Now, so the very first thing you want to do is find a place to land and you aim towards that point. It may be a few miles in front of you, it may be right below you. The idea is aim for that point to where you think you're going to make a safe landing. And we'll talk about how to pick a safe spot in a minute. So number one, the engine is starting to run rough. You think it's going to quit, or it does quit. Very first thing is find a place to land. Now, as pilots, we're taught to do more than one thing at a time, okay? So as I am looking for a place to land, what I would like to do is, what I need to do is really maximize my time aloft. And by that, I mean maximize the amount of time I'm going to be flying, so that way I have more time to do other things. So the next thing is you trim the airplane to what we call best glide, okay? So step number one, find a place to land. Step number two, trim the airplane for its best glide. Once those two items are completed, you know where you want to go. You've trimmed the airplane to the your best ability for the best glide. Now comes the what do I want to do? What's the next step? Next step is troubleshooting. Okay, and by troubleshooting, it means what's wrong with the airplane. Now, if you're flying and you hear a big loud bang and you see something coming out from the front of the cowling, well, I don't think the engine's gonna, with the piston or a big hole in the cowling means something is definitely wrong with the airplane. It's not gonna, how can I say, it's not gonna help you troubleshoot it because you already know what the issue is. Okay, the engine is not gonna restart. The reason why we troubleshoot is we don't know what the issue is, and we want to try to restart the airplane just in case. And for example, we could be flying at 6,500 feet and we're making a descent and we're down to 3,000. We forget to reach in the mixture and she starts to quit because the mixture, the fuel is too lean. So, and we're new, we're having a good time. We forget to reach in the mixture and the engine starts to quit. So the next thing is, like I said, so we find a place to land, we do the best glide, now we're going to troubleshoot. So first thing is, why does the engine quit? The most likely is fuel starvation. So make sure we go rich. If we fly a Cessna, the gas selector will be on both, okay, which means it's getting gas from both tanks at the same time. If we're flying a low wing, like a Piper, a lot of them have a gas selector for the left tank and the right tank. So the idea is, gee, if I'm on the left tank, the engine is quitting, let me go to the right tank. Something else also is, it could be maybe we have a filter that's clogged. Some of the airplanes have, like the low wing, have a fuel pump. Let's turn the fuel pump on to help, how can I say, with the pressure of the fuel going to the engine. So we go mixture rich, okay, switch gas tanks or check to see if we have gas. And if we don't have any gas and both tanks are empty, well, I don't think anything else is going to help us. Okay, we can move on to the next step. But for now, so we got mixture rich, we check the gas, and by checking the gas, we're making sure the fuel selector is on. We're making sure the fuel selector is on both, or we're switching gas tank, going from the left to the right. We'll turn the fuel pump on to help with the fuel pressure, to help to see in case it was a fuel pump issue, a fuel filter issue, okay? We check the mags. You never know. Vibration could have, how can I say, could have caused a loose wire to come, a wire to go loose. So by checking the mags, we can go left mag or right mag. We just go to one mag, and that in itself could bring the engine back to life, okay? And obviously that's still an issue, but at least the engine is not going to quit. So going back again, find a place to land, very first step. Second, maximize your time aloft to trim the air for best glide. Third is troubleshooting. We go back to fuel, mixture, fuel gas tank, fuel boost pump, fuel selector. That doesn't work. We go to the mags just to make sure, okay? To make sure, no, we go both, we go left, we go right. If that nothing happens, we'll go back to both. And something else that sometimes we don't think about is the primer. If we have a primer, if the primer gets loose, what will happen is it will allow air to go inside the fuel lines from the carburetor and the gas tank to the engine. And what happens is the engine starts to skip because it's got air going through the line. So the idea is to check to make sure that the primer is locked. So basically, you've done all you can with just those steps to see if something wrong, what's wrong with the airplane, and will it come back to life? Okay. Now, all that set aside, the engine is not running, it will not come back to life. So now we already have a place to land. We've already found one, okay? At least we're heading towards it. We're maximizing our time aloft by doing best glide. And now we know we can't start the airplane. Well, you know what? Let me tell somebody something is wrong. How do we do that? 7600, 7700 is the very first one on the transponder. When we're going to cross country, when we're going from point A to point B, we want to be familiar with our surroundings. Is there an airport with a control tower nearby? Okay, now we know the magic frequency is 121.5. Well, not every tower monitors 121.5. Somebody might. You might be talking to somebody who's 200 miles away and tell me you have an emergency. And that's good to do because at least you got somebody on the radio and you're going to tell them approximately where you are. But also, the reason why I say is see if there's an airport with a control tower nearby. If you're, let's say, 15 miles from the airport with a control tower, he's probably more familiar with the area versus an unknown person on 121.5. So the idea is you see if you can talk to that guy, tell that control tower person, tell him who you are, where you are, and you're having an engine problem, and he probably can help you a lot more than, like I said, an unknown person on 121.5. So basically the first 3 steps, or first 4, find a place to land, maximize your time aloft, best glide, troubleshoot, can't do anything, nothing, it's not working. Let somebody know what's going on. Squawk 7700 and find the proper frequency, again, 121.5 or a local control tower, and tell him what your issue is, okay? And then basically the rest of it comes with practice, trying to figure out how to position yourself to land the airplane, okay? Now, picking a spot. Obviously, the first thing is, let me see if I can find an airport. Okay. Well, let's say there are no airports in sight. Next spot could be an open field. Well, what are we looking for an open field? A dark green one. Stay away from a dark green. Well, from far away, it looks nice and flat. But what is dark green? Well, dark green means vegetation. It means water. It could be a bunch of trees. It could be grapevines. It could be how can I say, freshly planted, whatever, vegetation of some kind. But basically, when you have something that's dark green, you most likely have trees, and landing on the road on a patch of trees is not the best, okay? Now, it also could mean, as you get closer, it could be something flat like lettuce. That would be soft, okay? But those kind of things you don't know until as you get closer. So, but as a rule of thumb, dark green, you want to stay away from. Now, what's the next best spot? Now, well, we have green, we have light green, we have dark brown, light brown, okay? The best way to pick a spot, obviously, is you're going to be the only one who's going to know as far as what you see, what you have available. A light brown usually means dirt. It means nothing is growing on it. More like it could be, how can I say, soil that has not been watered, which means that it's going to be hard, okay? Dark brown could be something that's just got a field that maybe somebody's trying to grow something new, and it's freshly plowed and could have something, planted in. If it's freshly plowed, what it means is you're also going to have rows of dirt, which means if you land sideways, it could easily, how can I say, help you flip over. So you'd have to pay attention to which way the plowing is, that way you can land with the row of, with the way the dirt has been plowed. So you have the dark green, stay away from. Light green, possibility. Dark brown, stay away from, okay? Light brown, best possibility. Now, when we're picking a field, there are other things we want to obviously look for. What is next to that field? Is there a road next to the field? Well, usually, whenever you have a field out there where people grow things, they have to get there somehow. There could be a nice big wide road right next to it, which is perfect for a runway. And if we pick a nice wide road, one thing we gotta be careful of, are there any telephone poles next to it? Because that's also, we find that next to the roads because that's telephone poles that are above ground needs to be how can I say, needs a pole to be on. So telephones or power lines. So there's a variety of things you have to look at, be conscious of, in order to decide where the best spot to land, okay? And just make the best decision you can. Sometimes you'll find a field that's perfect, and at the last minute, there's a humongous ditch there, and there is nothing you can do about it. So the best thing you can do is handle it, as just do the best you can as far as either avoiding the ditch or landing beyond the ditch or before the ditch. One thing I've noticed that a lot of applicants do is they get in a hurry. I've got the field and they try to get in a hurry to make it. And what happens, usually they overshoot the field. So what I try to tell people is, students, once you've located where you think you're going to land, you do your emergency procedure, you do your best glide, try to set yourself up as if you are in an airport traffic pattern, a downwind, a base, and a final. And the reason why that is because it's something that's familiar to you and easier for your judgment versus doing a straight in from far away. Am I too high? Am I too low? So try to maneuver yourself on as if you were entering a downwind, base, and final. And it makes it easier for your judgment and to make a safe landing. Now, sometimes, the inevitable will happen where, hey, I'm over the mountains and there is just no good place to land. So that's, the best thing to do sometimes is pitch the best that you can and do the best that you can. Any questions so far? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 people listening.
I got a question.
Okay, go for it.
I mean, it's not a question, it's a comment, but can you bring up to them where 95% of the people go wrong on
a check ride?
No, not on a check ride, but on just in real life.
In real life, 95% of accidents are people trying to hurry to land the airplane. And most of the time they overshoot the field that they picked and go some way beyond it and wind up being in a ditch somewhere or in a worse field. They get in a hurry. I've seen people over an airport.
And the second thing, the biggest second thing is you're going to crash land the airplane. You're not going to stall it and go.
I see. Yes.
So just know that
always be under control. Don't try to, sometimes what happens, people, they get in a hurry and they see they're going to overshoot the runway, the spot where they're going to land. They pull up to try to slow down, and they pull up, they get into a stall, and they're 500 feet above the ground. They get into stall spin, and they crash the airplane. And again, that's being in a hurry.
They're not wanting to understand that they're coming in, landing wherever they're going to end up landing, whether it be a mountain or field or dry field or wet field, whatever field they end up at, where it's time that the plane is no longer going to fly. You have to commit to keeping that nose down and keeping it as slow as possible, but not pulling that yoke up.
Exactly.
You can stall.
Very good point, Jamie.
Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah. Don't be in a hurry and don't try not to fly high. If you're going to crash the plane or land the plane off airport, the best thing you can do is always have the aircraft under control. Sometimes you may overshoot the field that where you decide you're going to land, and there might be one to your left, there might be one to your right. The idea is, and this all comes with practice, obviously, not, just go out one time and try to practice and do it and you get it right, because it takes hours of practice to do that. And my suggestion is, with your instructor, try to go through those procedures and see how you react and how you can pick a field and how you can line yourself up. For example, you've always heard, always land into the wind, always land into the wind. And what happens, we pick a field and, well, we miscalculated when I was downwind. And people have been, how can I say, they've been brainwashed, always land into the wind. So they try to make a turn into the wind and they're too low, they pull up and now we do a stall spin. To be honest with you, I would rather land downwind and do a safe landing versus trying to land upwind into the wind and trying to be too low to maneuver the airplane. Nothing wrong with landing the airplane downwind, okay? There really is not, we obviously we're taught to land into the wind, which is good because it slows our ground speed when we're touching down. But if you make a mistake and you have to land downwind, it's not the end of the world. So what? Okay. For a perfect example would be, here you are, and you overflew an airport. Okay, you're flying into the wind, and you overflew the airport, and the engine quit. Well, the airport's behind you. You make a 180, you try to troubleshoot, and it's not going to start. So now I have a choice. I have a runway in front of me that I can land downwind on, or I can try to stretch it and do a downwind and try to come into the wind. Okay, and let's say I'm too low. Some people have been, again, they've been told you have to land into the wind. They will try to go downwind and try to do a tight turn, do a stall spin onto the runway, onto the field, when they easily could have touched down on the numbers going downwind and have a nice safe landing. Yes, we want to try to land into the wind first, but a safe landing is downwind is better than a crash into the wind. Like I said, it takes practice, something you should do with your instructor from time, as you, how can I say, as you get closer to a check ride, something you want to do, you go to the practice area, here you are doing your maneuvers, you're flying back to the airport, boom, have your instructor pull the engine, where are you going to land? And do that often enough where it becomes second nature. As you're flying point A to point B, really, you'll start picking out fields below you that you don't even know exist, and then see the engine quits. Oh, I remember that field. Boom! I'm gonna make it. I gotta make a left turn, and I know where it is. So it's just something it becomes second nature, and the only way it can become second nature is basically to keep practicing it as often as you can.
Hey, Richard, question for you. I've been doing some flying around a little bit with a friend, and we've been doing a lot of mountain terrains. Is it still true to land uphill, obviously, as flat as obviously, but you're going to have a little bit of a hill? Can you talk about what to do if you have to land that way?
Well, okay, so let's say uphill versus downhill. Okay, the idea would be going uphill, but uphill, am I going to try to, how can I say, if I'm too low and I need to land downhill, I go downhill. It just, it's always it's better to land on the runway versus off the road. But if I don't have a runway, I will land on the road. Okay. Let's say, for example, I'm over the mountains and basically just no flat land, is all hilly or whatever else. Okay. The minute, it's so many hills, so many boulders, the minute I touch down, I'm going to, the airplane is going to, how can I say, roll and tip over. Well, I don't have a choice. Basically, I'm going to crash the airplane. I'm going to crash it under control. By that, I'll pick the flattest place I can find, okay, or open area. I will fly as low as I can, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the airplane off the ground, a few feet above the ground, until I do stall it about 3 feet. And the reason why I do that is because, okay, the tail is going to most likely hit first, and it will absorb most of the shock. Then the nose will pitch down, the wheel will absorb most of the shock. Okay, the second, by then you've slowed down some. And then if the aircraft is going to tip over, you're going to tip over at a slower speed. Versus if it's really bad, just go straight ahead and hit something. So you're over a forest, okay? There is no place to go. It's just trees, that's all you've got. Sounds good. Bring my flaps down, put the gears down, my gear down. If I'm flying retractable, fly right above the trees and slow it down and let it stall right above the trees. By stalling it right above the trees, once it stalls, the plane starts to settle, the wings will how can I say, absorb most of the shocks for the trees. So there are a variety of ways to crash an airplane or basically make the best decision you can for the area where you're at. But I will go uphill before I go downhill. Did I answer your question?
You did, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else with any anything?
I have one. So if you're experiencing like serious engine roughness or just a loss in RPM,
Mhm.
when would you consider it a good idea to do an emergency landing instead of like trying to fly on for another airport?
Well, okay, that's a good point. That's a very good question. The very first thing is okay, I've got something is wrong, it's running rough. Okay, I'm looking for a spot to land. I'm gonna look for the best place I can. All right. And obviously an airport, road, or an open field. Now I know what I'm gonna do the best glide. That's number two, to maximize my time. The third thing is troubleshooting. So now is the engine still running? Well, if it's still producing power, where yes, I'm losing altitude, but it can carry me further because it's still producing power, I will try to find an airport. So now it depends how much power is it producing. Is it just idling? Okay, if it's idling, it's not going to do me any good. But let's say, for example, it goes from 2,500 RPM cruise is down to 2,000 RPM. Well, at 2,000 RPM, she will hold altitude, right? It's like doing slow flight. So I can't get more than 2,000, but she's holding me up. So I'm not going to crash the airplane. I'm going to find an airport. Now, on my way to a good spot or to an airport, I'm also going to be looking, well, what happens that it goes from 2,000 to dead silence? Okay, it quits. So I'm going to be aware of what's below me. I may fly a zigzag pattern from a good spot to a good spot until I get close to the airport and do a landing, okay? But as long as the airplane or the engine is producing power and it can carry me further, if I need it, that's what I'm going to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, because I think that was a good question, and it's a good point. If the plane is still flying, you want to fly it. You know, you never want to land a plane that's still flying. I had a friend that both of his mags went bad when he was flying, and it was a hellhole. It was sounding like the plane was gonna explode. But it was a nighttime, it was dark, and there was no airports, around. And the best decision for him was to keep flying that airplane until he got to the field that he needed to be at. He landed, and then they took the plane apart and everything was fine. But you don't want to land and make a situation more worse than not. So, right? I mean, Richard, unless
No, I agree. If it's flying, keep flying the airplane to where you can make a safe landing, an easy landing. Okay. People say a highway, for example, that's a perfect road. Well, yeah, there are cars. Well, you know what? I've had a guy, he was a friend over Reno at night. The prop came off. I mean, the crankshaft broke. He became a glider. He was at 8,000 feet. You know what? He picked Highway 80. Well, not 80, but the one that goes north and south. He picked one of the highways, and basically it was at nighttime, and the cars lit the road. I mean, it was like the freeway, where the road was lit by cars. He was familiar with the freeway, and what he did was he landed with the cars. Guess what the cars did? What's going to happen when you have a car and if you're driving your car and you see an airplane go in front of you? You're going to slow down. You're not going to want to run into it, So you're going to slow down, give that airplane room, give it space. So pick a spot where, even if it's a highway, if it's daytime, pick a spot with the, with the traffic. And if that's your best spot, I'll guarantee you, people will get out of your way and give you time, to to slow down and come to a safe stop. You know, many safe, successful landings have been done on the freeway. Any questions?
I actually saw that happen in LA. I know it's not a question, but it
No,
was a
that's okay.
fighter. It was like a fighter jet, or like it was a really old one. It was like, I want to say like a couple years ago, and it landed on the freeway and caught on fire, and the guy was okay. But yeah, all the cars got out the way. So.
They'll get out of your way. That's exactly right. Okay. So, you know, it's one of those where you almost have to, like I said, look for the best fit and don't panic. It's hard, you know, easier said than done. But really, if you take your time, you fly the airplane, trim it to your best speed, you know, you maximize your time in the air, you have more time to think and really more time to relax. And there's another type of emergency that can happen, which it happens from time to time. Okay, we don't hear that much. Is, for example, a total loss of electrical failure. Okay, the battery we lose the alternator while we're flying, and we don't notice it, and we're flying, and next thing we know, everything just goes dark. The radios goes bad. You know, the radio that cannot transmit. We can't hear anything. Basically, we have a total loss of electricity. That's really not so bad, because do we need electricity to fly an airplane? The answer is no. A lot of the older airplanes they're flying in class Echo in a variety of airspace, okay, with no alternator, with no battery. Some of them you have to hand prop to start them, okay? And some of those are very fun to fly. You don't need electricity to fly. But in today's age, you know, with the airspace that's around us, you know, it's nice to have. Now you're going, assuming imagine you're going on a cross-country point A to point B, depending how far it's apart, and you're flying the airplane, and you notice that your amp meter shows a draw. And by that, I mean it's no longer in the positive, it's in the negative. What does that tell you? That means that your alternator is no longer working and you are flying off the battery. The battery is producing all the power for everything on board. Now, while we're flying, the idea is, you know, you've been told, scan your instruments, but that's something sometimes, something that we forget to scan is the amp meter or the voltmeter to see how much, how strong the battery is. And believe it or not, it happens to everybody. You know, you lose the alternator and you don't notice it until 10 minutes later. Okay. Or you don't even notice it, and you have the radio on and you hear the person you're talking to for flight following, he's becoming more gobble and hard to understand. Usually what that means is the radio is getting weaker and weaker, which means for it to get weak is the battery is running dead. So let's just go for a typical scenario. You're going point A to point B, you're at cruise altitude, you notice that the amp meter is in the negative side. The battery is going dead, okay? Is that an emergency? Well, it could be, depending where I am, okay? It may be not, it's a maybe or maybe not. But definitely, that's not average, that's not normal, okay? So what do we wanna do? What's the next best step? Well, are we in the pattern? If we're in the pattern, we land, we're done. We get it taken care of, okay? But let's say here we are 6,500 feet, whatever altitude, we're going point A to point B. All right, so now we notice something is wrong. We're losing power. The very first thing I do is we can try to troubleshoot, it isn't that much troubleshooting going on because the battery gets recharged by the alternator. And if the alternator is not working, there's nothing you can do, okay? Now, sometimes on some airplanes, they have what they call an alternator reset. You turn the alternator off, then you turn it back on. And that sometimes can take care of the problem. And by doing that, it kind of regenerates or resets a circuit breaker inside the generator or the alternator. And when you do the reset off and on, you look at your amp meter and see if the draw is on the positive side. Okay, it's not. If it's on the positive side, you fix the problem, okay? You keep on going. And when you get home, you tell the mechanic, hey, this is what happened to me. And it could be once in a blue moon that may happen, it may not happen, who knows? Now you are flying and you reset your alternator, and guess what? It's still in a negative. Well, where am I? And what's my next step? Well, by where am I? I'm thinking, okay, how close am I to home? Am I over the desert? Am I over a stretch of area where there is nobody to talk to? There's nothing below me. So the idea is I'm going to give you a procedure that you may want to change based on where you are. Very first thing I do, I turn the battery off. Why? Well, I turn the battery off. I'm not using any electricity, which means that whatever battery voltage I had is going to stay that way. And we need electricity to do, to talk, to activate some of the systems, flaps, or whatever else. Okay, basically turn the battery off and you're done. The engine will keep on running, and you're going to and now what do I want to do? I'm not sure where everybody's from, obviously, so I can't give you an example. I'll use California since that's where I'm at. I'll use, for example, Northern California. I'm flying. My destination is 300 miles away. Well, you know what? I don't think I'm going to continue 300 miles with the master switch off or the battery off, because I would like to take care of the problem. But I'm going home. I'm 30 miles away. Well, you know what? 30 miles is not so bad. I can navigate by using pilotage, dead reckoning, okay, with a map or with an iPad, like we all fly with an iPad lately, get me where I want to go, okay? And then if I'm whether I'm on a control tower at the airport or not, when I'm close within 5 miles, turn the battery back on, okay? What I would do also, though, is I turn the battery back on, I would probably just leave one radio on and that's it, and maybe my transponder, and I would turn everything else that I can turn off. Like a lot of people like to turn. I want to fly with the strobes on. I want to fly with the beacon on, my landing light, so people can see where I'm at. Well, with all those things on, that's a lot of draw on the battery, okay, which will cause the battery to go dead a lot quicker. The average life of a battery, if you don't notice anything, is about 20, with everything on, will last you about 20 minutes. You can stretch it to an hour if you turn everything off and only have one radio on. So that comes where am I and what do I want to do next? So the battery goes off. I decide where I am, what my next action is. Okay, you think I'm going to land within the next 20 minutes. I'm going to pick an airport. All right, so I fly to that airport, okay? And when I get close, turn the battery on, only turn one radio on, okay? And then from there, if I'm an uncontrolled airport, I don't need the transponder, just the radios. That way I can announce, make my proper calls, listen to the air, watch, see what the winds are. And if I've got electrical flaps, I can use I can use that to lower the flaps. If I'm flying with an airplane that has retractable landing gear, the flaps are the last thing I'm going to do because they take power. So the very first thing I'm going to do is battery on, radio on, gear down, because the gear takes a lot of power also. And that way, once the gear is down, I don't need a radio to land the airplane. I don't need flaps to land the airplane. So depending on what the system that you have on board the airplane depends on what your next action is. So now battery comes on, gear comes down. I've got my 3 greens, I'm hoping, okay. And that's usually that's the very first thing I'm gonna do. And then I do my radio calls to land. If I have a control tower at the airport, I would tell, you don't even have to say, hey, I got an emergency. My gear is down. I can talk to him, turn the transponder on, he can see me. It's a normal landing because the battery will last with just, with the radio and using the, you use the gear, you use the flaps to slow you down. It will still last another 15, 20 minutes because I've minimized, I had the sense of turning the battery off as quick as I noticed it, okay, conserving my power. And then when I talk to the tower, it's basically business as usual. Now, what may happen is if I didn't notice that the battery was dead, maybe I was discharging for 10 minutes, you have no way of knowing. you can see the draw on the amp meter and they kind of have an idea how much, how can I say, how many voltage, you know, there's also a voltmeter on the airplane, and see how many volts I have left on the battery. A strong battery, new battery, 24 volts. A used battery, after, if I lose, you know, if I lost the alternator, I may be down to 22 volts. So now I notice I'm at 18 volts left on the battery. You know what? Everything goes off. I don't turn anything on with 18 volts. And the only thing I'm going to use is if I don't need to lower my gear, one radio, and that's it. And with 18 volts, depending how strong, you know, the new battery, old battery, I got at least 10 minutes worth of talking on the radio. So, you know, because we lose an alternator, because we have electrical failure, it does not mean that it's, you know, hey, I have to panic, because the airplane is going to keep on flying without electricity. So I'm going point A to point B. I did not notice that I lost the my alternator. I'm talking with my friend, boyfriend, wife, kids, you know, and we're having fun listening to XM radio. And then things starts to get blurry as the sound gets blurrier and blurrier. And all of a sudden you see the radios get dim, okay? And oh, wow, basically I just used all my radio, all my battery, and basically I have nothing left. Okay, still, I would turn the battery off, okay? Conserve the little bit that I have. And again, the airplane is going to keep on flying. So now it just depends how far do I want to go with no radio and no battery. I would most likely pick an airport that's uncontrolled. That way I don't have to talk to the tower, okay? And land at the nearest suitable airport. It could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, it could be a 30-minute flight. And the reason why is I'm gonna pick an airport where, okay, I know there are services, because I'm gonna wanna get this fixed, all right? So I would pick one that would make it, you know, that also, depending how far I'm away from home, I may need to rent a car. So usually, you know, if we have, depending what we have as far as our facility directory or iPad to tell us about the airport we're going to, that could make a difference of which one I'm going to pick. Well, you know what? An airport with a control tower is more like to have a rental car, because I need to get home, okay? Or the plane is going to be grounded and I got to find a way to get home somehow. How do I land at an airport with a control tower and I have no battery, no way of telling them? Well, you know, the idea is, I'm going to attract the attention of the guy on the control tower. What I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the airport traffic pattern as normal, okay? Left traffic pattern for most airports. I'm on a airport traffic pattern. I'm going to start rocking my wings the whole time in the pattern. I'm going to turn base. I'm not going to lose any altitude. I'm going to stay at airport traffic pattern. I'm going to rock my wings. I'm going to go on final and overfly the runway and rock my wings. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a light gun signal. I'm looking for that.
Can you see them in the day, the light gun signal?
Oh, yes, they can, you know, and that's a good question. Okay, some of us will probably never seen that, okay? You know, nothing wrong on a pleasure flight. You're landing at a control tower at the airport, and you tell the tower, now do it when he's not busy, because if he's busy, he's going to tell you to pound sand or come back at a different time. But really, you should just, on a normal day when it's not busy, you tell the tower, you know what? Hey, tower, Cessna, whatever, I've never seen a light gun, the color of a light gun. Would you mind flashing a green light at me, a steady green? Would you mind flashing a steady red or a flashing red? You'd be surprised how much those guys would love to do that for you. Yeah. So that way, you know, it gives them something else better to do, okay, than talking to people, just talking on the radio, and you get to see what it looks like. I do that with all my students. I have the tower flashing lights so they can see what it looks like. So what are we looking for? We're looking, you know, we want to land. We're looking for that steady green, okay, which is a clear to land. Or as I'm overflying the tower, he may give me a flashing green. That means that I see you, basically, line yourself up for a landing, and I will give you a steady green to land. Mm-hmm. So the idea is you try to catch the attention of the control tower. Now, sometimes the battery may be, by turning the battery off completely, believe it or not, by turning it off, it's sometimes the battery will come back to life a little bit. It's not, there is no draw on the battery. So it's like, for example, if you're tired and you take a break, you rest, you have a little more energy, okay? So you may have enough energy to flash your landing lights on and off, but not enough to talk on the radio.
Question, sorry.
Go ahead.
When would you squawk? When would you squawk?
Oh, you would, the 76 would be the loss. The 76 would, if you have enough power to do 7600, usually you have enough power to talk on the radio. Okay. So the idea though is, I would try to talk first, because 76 is kind of a.
Well, remember when you were saying you're rocking your wings, remember?
Right.
So.
Well, if you have no power, you have no power.
Oh, so you can't
Okay.
squawk anything.
You can't talk on the radio. If you can't talk on the radio,
Okay.
whether I squawk 76 or not makes no difference.
Got it. My friend lost his radios only, sorry. And that's what I was thinking. He squawked 7600 and then then the ambulances were there and everything, because it was
Well, if he might be at 7700 for emergency.
No, it was 7600 he
Okay.
did. But, all right,
Now,
anyway.
yeah, and well, see, this is where sometimes you may lose your radio, but not lose electricity. That's a different type of failure. Yes, 7600, I lost comm. But you know what? I'm going to enter the airport traffic pattern the same way. I'm going to rock my wings. I'm going to turn base without losing altitude, pattern altitude, rock my wings, overfly the runway, flash my landing lights on, off, rock my wings. And I'll do that 2 or 3 times until and believe me, you'll catch his attention, because he's going to say, who is this guy in my traffic pattern I'm not talking to? But he sees you rocking your wings and maybe flashing your lights. Yeah, this guy's in trouble. He deserves it. I'm going to give him a how can I say, a steady green, allowing him to land. So, that's what we're looking for, is a steady green, which is clear to land. And don't be afraid to, like I said, if you're flying point A to point B, you're going to an airport, your home airport, if it has a control tower, if it does not, and you're landing on an airport that has a control tower, if it's not busy, ask them, hey, would you mind? I've never seen one before. I would like to see what it looks like. And believe me, they'll be more than happy to do it. Any questions?
Okay, well, people are thinking, I have a question.
Go ahead.
And this is I really am wondering about this. For the students here that are, with instructors or whatnot, would you suggest, and I don't know, like I said, I'm just really wondering about this. If you're out of like ADSB required areas, would you suggest that then maybe their instructor turn off the master and battery one time to kind of see what happens, or maybe not do that?
You mean
scenario?
as a training aid?
Training, like just to kind of see, hey, everything's off, cause you flipping the battery on and off.
No, there's nothing wrong. Okay. Now, for your instructor, for yourself, you're in flight. I wonder what this does. Now, that's something you could do while you're on the ground also. You start the engine, you're on the ground, you turn the battery off, and you see exactly what happens. Okay, that doesn't have to be done in flight. You can just do it on the ground.
It feels different in flight. It
It does.
different.
Believe me, the pucker factor is a little higher. That's exactly right. So do it on the ground, see what it's like. Okay, see what you lose. Okay, turn it back on, watch everything come back to life. And if you're an experienced pilot, okay, nothing wrong. If you want to see what it's like in flight, turn it off, see what it does. Okay, if you have a master switch, or if you have a battery switch and an alternator switch, they're both different. Turn the alternator off and see what the draw is on your load meter. Turn it back on and see how it reacts. All this basically makes you notice things when they really happen. It makes you understand what happens, what things look like, okay? And you become not afraid. For example, a multi-engine airplane. People are afraid to practice shutting down one and feathering an engine and see what it likes, see what it's like in flying on one engine. They're afraid to turn the one of them off. Well, one is required training, okay? But the thing is, until you do it and you see what it's like, is, how can I say, you really never understand until you see the actual thing. So nothing wrong with practicing an emergency, seeing what it's like, okay? And if you're a newbie with an instructor or an experienced pilot who's done it before, and just to see what things look like if it was to happen for real. Remember, one of the things that you do for your practical, whether it's a private, commercial, CFI, is you have to demonstrate that you can handle an emergency, a loss of engine power in flight. That's a requirement. So nothing wrong with practicing it as much as you can versus going point A to point B and going to lunch and going to breakfast and coming home. Practice, even if you do that, practice it in between sometimes, just so that way, when it really happens, I've done it 100 times already, not a big deal.
And if you fly different airplanes, a 150, a 172, a 182, they all have different performance. And so it's
different ways of gliding.
Mhm.
Okay, but they all have best glide speed, and that best glide speed is nice to know, and it also, how can I say, buys you time
If you need it.
if you need it. Exactly. But here you are, you lost your power, you lost the engine, you lost the battery, you're at 6,000 feet and there's an airport below you. Don't be in a hurry to get down. Take your time, do the circle over the airport 15, 20, 30 times, line yourself up with the downwind basin final. I'll guarantee you, you take your time. Once you are to where you want to land, you'll come out with a better, 99%, you'll make a good, safe landing. You may land hard, you may land fast, who cares? It'll be a nice, safe three-pointer and be able to walk away without any damage to the airplane, versus you get in a hurry and you miss the airport completely or your spot completely and having to land somewhere where you don't want to, in a ditch or stall spin. If you take your time, that's the majority of it. By taking your time, it really helps calm you down. It allows you to think and you handle the emergency a lot easier. Any questions?
Someone has to have a question besides me. Come on. Somebody.
Well, I was hoping to cover FARs today. Obviously, just the topic of emergencies took a long time. I tried to go very, very slow to, because I'm hoping some of you guys, you wrote down the procedure. Really, when I give a person a practical test, what I'm looking for is the engine quit. Let me find a place to land. That's the very first thing. Best glide speed. As I'm looking, I'm trimming for best glide. Two things at once. I look left, I look right, I look below me. I knew what was behind me. Here's my best spot. Make a turn. I'm heading for it. All right. Let me take a breather. I'm on best glide. I've got time. Okay. Let me troubleshoot. Mixture, fuel, primer, mags, fuel selector, boost pump. Okay. Not much else I can do, right? Nah, it's not gonna run. Okay, I'm committed. Okay, so now let me line myself up, Squawk 7700, 121.5 or a local frequency, okay, for a control tower at airport, or somebody, you might be close to an airport and there might be people landing at the at the uncontrolled tower there, uncontrolled airport right next to you because you can't get there. You know what? Talk to them. They may have an idea. They know, they know exactly where you are, okay? And line yourself up, take your time. One last thing you do before you do, when you're on final approach, which I didn't mention before, no matter what, turn your battery off and crack your door open. Okay? And that's it, open the door. Let it, it makes no difference. Just open it if you can. You won't be able to make it open all the way, but at least unlock it and open it. And by cracking it, what that does is, in case you have a hard landing, or you roll or whatever, what happens is, if the airframe gets twisted,
You can get
that's
out.
okay. The door is already open. You can push it open when you're done, when you come to a stop, and get out. If the door is closed and you have a hard landing and the airframe gets twisted just a little bit, you may not be able to open the door. Now you're stuck trying to open the other door or kick the windshield out or hoping somebody gets to you on time.
We might have to end on a positive note because I think we've now freaked everybody out. New
Yeah,
pilots and old.
No, hey,
So
yeah,
this was
crack that door open.
this was a great reminder, because I feel like student pilots are so good at always picking landing spots, and then I fly with somebody that's been flying forever, and it's just totally oblivious, not looking for landing spots, don't look down, just chatting away. And it's always a good thing to have in the back of your head, no matter what.
Any questions? Any suggestions? Any comments?
This has been really good information. Thank you, Richard, for your thoroughness. I really appreciate it.
You are more than welcome. And really, the procedure is not that hard to memorize. It really isn't. Once you do it 3 or 4 times, it's in the back of your head. Any checklist that what I just did, just that short procedure, it covers every airplane, every checklist.
I think also this further enhances before you take off, reviewing everything too, before what happens. So
Exactly. That's a frame of mind. That's part of the brief. Something goes wrong, that's what you mentally want to brief yourself, even if you don't have a passenger. All right, I'm taking off. If the engine quit, what am I going to do? Okay. And that doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. I'd say about 7 years ago, for those of you that are in California, 6 years ago, a friend of mine lost his best friend, took off from Rio Linda, going to Auburn, okay, and the engine quit in between. Ex-military, 800 hours of flying time, hardly ever practiced emergency landing. Landed the airplane, didn't crack the door, flipped over, okay, couldn't get out, airplane caught on fire, and he died.
Did he land straight from Rio Linda, straight out?
He was more towards Auburn.
Okay.
He was close to Auburn. He went from the Rio Linda to Auburn. He was closer to Auburn. Picked a good field, okay, but didn't turn the battery off, didn't crack the door open. And just by not cracking that door open, that's what got him.
The door, yeah.
Okay, unfortunately.
So the battery for electrical fire, I assume, or
The battery is for electrical fire.
So does
okay.
how does it stop an electrical fire from sparking in
Well,
general?
Okay.
Like electricity that's going through everything?
Well, when you turn the battery off, what it does is it shuts off power from the battery to the cockpit. Okay, it removes the power. For example, let's say you have gas in the wings of Cessna high wing. All right, you hit hard and you puncture the wing and fuel starts to come in. If the wires underneath the dash are live,
Mhm.
okay, that can start a spark.
Mhm.
If the wires underneath the dash are dead, it won't give you a spark.
Makes sense.
Make sense? So
Just like-
therefore, turn the battery off.
Yeah.
That way you kill all the power underneath the dash.
Like sticking your finger in a light bulb socket. If the switch is off, you can do it all day long.
Oh.
If it's on, you might get zapped, you might
You
not.
might get
Who
zapped.
knows?
That's basically what it is. But even more important, crack the door open.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one.
Are you saying to turn off battery prior to landing or after landing?
Prior to landing.
Okay, I've heard in some scenarios, like, I suppose they either don't turn it off or turn it back on when they land, that if they're talking to somebody, they'll flip it back on and say, hey, on the ground safely.
Well, no, exactly. I mean, for example, and the reason you turn the battery off just in case you will do a bad landing, crash, rollover, flip, whatever else. Okay. But You turn the battery off and you do a nice safe landing. Hey, I'm gonna turn the battery on. I'm gonna tell somebody I'm okay. That's the perfect, that is the right thing to do. You want to tell people, whoever you were talking to, I landed safely. I do need help, don't need help. Send a taxi over so I can go home, okay? But yes, you wanna do that. The reason why you turn it off is in case you were to crash by accident, hit a ditch that caused you to roll over and you get knocked unconscious. Now you can't turn the battery off because it's too late. So you turn it off before, and then everything goes good, turn it back on, do what you need to do.
Would you also turn off the gas because that as well too?
I would turn off the gas. That would be correct. Turning off the gas. And that's a good point, which I didn't bring up, but that's a very good point. The gas goes from, let's take a high wing, even for a low wing. It goes from the wings through the cockpit, under the floorboard to the engine, okay? You flip over. The engine is hot. It breaks, you break a fuel line. Guess what happens? Fuel is gonna drip onto the hot part of the engine, causing a fire. If you shut the engine, if you shut the fuel off at the gas, on the Cessna, on the floorboard or whatever else, you flip over, the fuel is going to get trapped in the wings and it's not going to flowing through the engine because you've shut it off. Whatever was in there is with the engine windmilling got sucked out and it's not doing it, it's how can I say, there is no fuel between the airframe and the engine. Good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I did forget to say, shut the gas off.
Do you think, and I know you probably don't know the statistics on this, but do you think from the airplanes that have crashed and caught on fire, that a percentage of them wouldn't have caught on fire if they would have turned the fuel and the battery and everything else off?
No statistics, no idea.
All right, thought I'd ask.
All right, well, that's it for today.
Okay.
And next week we'll go into I think FARs, and if anybody else has anything else that they want us to cover, that would be great.
Thank you.
And Jamie, when's the next one?
Every 2 weeks on a Tuesday. So exactly 2 weeks from today at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Put it in your calendar. That will be
on the 30th.
30th of August, whatever month it is.
October, my God.
And can we watch this again somewhere? Probably on your website, right?
I
Cool.
did record it and I will upload it on YouTube, the vocals. And then I try to do that every time. It just gets busy sometimes. But yeah, we do have some of them. And I'll, if you send me an email at info@girlslove2fly, happy to send you a link. And if you guys ever can't make it, same thing. I try to catch a link, but yeah, shoot me an email. I'll send it to you.
Thanks so much. Great information. Yay.
Thanks for coming.
Glad you guys could join us. Enjoy. Happy flying.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Richard. Appreciate it.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Bye.